1, 2, check 1, 2. All right. Here for yet another week. This time at Oulton Park, still staying across the pond, still staying in the Commonwealth. And YouTube and everything seems to be good. So here we are at Oulton Park, getting ready for round 5 of the GFR Season 3 of their GT3 series. And here in practice, it is early days, but Ormiston is still, I say still, once again on the top of the timing boards in GT3, but not quite in a position to hold on to it. It's Giant and Peach right behind. But Ormiston needing to recover. Missed out on the 4 in a row last week. Did get the hat trick, the 3 wins in a row, but missing out last week in not his best race of the season, obviously. I believe Ormiston did end up finishing in 4th or 5th. But Ormiston likely looking to reclaim the throne, but only time will tell. This is just practice. Ormiston is top of the timing boards here, but so was he in practice at Silverstone, I believe, and we all know how that qualifying ended up, dropping down the order, not qualifying in the front row for the first time this season, I believe, and not being able to move past the leaders on the first lap. Overall ended up racing at the front of the mid-pack or the back of the lead pack. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Hope everybody saw some good racing. The Dutch Grand Prix was alright, but the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona was one to watch. They had cars flying upside down every which way. I believe we also had some GT racing at VIR, which I didn't have much time in the weekend to really get much of a grasp of. But I did see that, I believe it was one of the Proton Mustang GT3s got its first pole position off of raw pace in GT3. Now we have seen many a Mustang pole here in GFR, especially in Season 3 here. But the first real-life pole position for the Mustang GT3 at VIR this past weekend. And I will be able to hear and see those Coyote V8s, or the Voodoo V8, whatever they call it in those Mustangs now. I want to say it is the Voodoo motor, but I would have to go double check on that. But I will get to hear them this weekend, as I am ecstatic about going to the World Endurance Championship, the WEC Lone Star Le Mans this weekend. If you're going to be there, make sure you find me, come say hi, get to connect with me on Discord, find me on Instagram, wherever. I would like to meet as many of you as possible at the Lone Star Le Mans. I know that there will be some of you there, so I will be there the entire weekend, rain or shine. Less than 7 minutes left in practice here. So, Oulton Park, an odd looking track, kind of like a misshapen Laguna Seca, like if you dropped Laguna Seca down the stairs. maybe when it was a child. But we are not in Monterey. We are here in the United Kingdom. I am Buddy Yankee, so don't ask me where Oulton Park is. I would tell you North Cambridgeshire, and that's not even a place. Tell you it's probably in Oulton. That's about it. But while we still have a little bit of time left here in practice, let's go ahead and get a lay of the land. Let's go on board with Brad, or maybe not on board with Brad. I may have just jinxed Brad there, but let's go on board with Salinas as we go to get a lay of the land and see what a lap is about. Coming out of Lodge corner, the second to last corner, there is the deer lead up the hill here, slight kink to the left, the pit entry on the right, very short run, get up through a few of the gears before we come into Old Hall corner. Slight camber on the inside, but a lot of runoff on the outside into the straight into turn 2, the kink of Denton's, and the long off-camber left-hander of Cascades. You can see it's called Cascades because it kind of falls away from you. Down the lakeside straight as we come to Island Bend. This is a slightly cambered left-hander with some curve on the inside till we come to the very cambered right-hander of the Old Shell Oils corner. Trying to hang it around the outside. Salinas gets a little too eager on the grass on the outside, and that is going to be an entry into the pit lane. But let's hop on with number 32 of Peachy to pick up where we left off. Now coming into Britain's, the chicane consisting of turns 7, 8, and 9. A little bit too deep there, but nothing too bad down the hilltop straight. Come into Hislips, the second chicane, 2 chicanes in quick succession. This is the 10 and 11 chicane with the turn 12 kind of odd, awkward right-hander of Knickerbrook as we come up the hill for the 2 45-degree left-handers of Clay Hill and Water Tower before we come into Druids. I don't know how many corners out there are named Druids. There seem to be quite a few. Down the Warwick Bridge straight as we come into Lodge once again. A lot of elevation change, a lot of camber both in your favor and to your detriment, as you can have corners with camber facing in, corners with camber sloping away. That camber in is really nice to help pull you through the corner. That camber out as we watch the McLaren of Peachy camber outwards will kind of force the track to fall away from you and make you have to work those tires, work that steering wheel a little bit harder to stay on track. Giant in the Manti EMA Porsche in that Grello livery, the iconic Grello livery that we have seen both Giant and who is the other Porsche? Both Giant and Mad Sycaster with those Grello liveries. Just a couple minutes left here in free practice. Ormiston down to P2, but only 0.04 of a second off of that pole position. That is a minuscule amount of time to improve. As Aramich makes it slightly less minuscule, doubles the gap, but from 0.4 to nearly 0.8, or from 0.04 to nearly 0.08. Aramich top of the timing boards with a 33.8 in that Ferrari 296. And Aramich, I believe, looking for his first win of the season, could come here at Oulton Park. If you are able to get on the pace early here, there are not too many opportunities for an overtake if you are able to get out in front, stay out in front, should be relatively easy to build a gap, and in the pit lane, you do not gain or lose too much time. It is a very, very short straight. It is a very short pit lane. Quick in and out. Stop and go penalties also have a little bit less of a penalty. It's not going to be a 30-second. It should be about a 20-second stop and go penalty, just due to the track being a little bit shorter. But less than a minute left here in free practice as we get ready to kick over to qualifying. Just like to take the time now to thank you for tuning in. If you are not following, if you wouldn't mind hitting that follow button. If you are watching on YouTube or do not know that I have a YouTube, if you would hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. And for those Thrustmaster users or people interested in getting some Thrustmaster gear, I do have a promo code. Do not have a discount as of yet, but if you use promo code RETROVEX, R3TROVEX, at checkout, you will be supporting the streams, and hopefully, after a little bit of a good partnership with Thrustmaster on that promo side, we should be able to get some gear and discounts for viewers and leagues. So if you are interested in acquiring any Thrustmaster gear, please use that code at checkout on the Thrustmaster website, and you would be supporting these streams in a very, very big way. Well, the clock has come down to 0, and Aramich back into P2 now just by 0.03 of a second. Ormiston did retake that lead, 33.7, besting the 33.8 of Aramich. But some practice pit entries here as the field comes in to end the practice session, and we are now ready to get going here in qualifying. We will see if we have a split qualifying. I believe we do. Number 343 of Michael D, first out on track, the solo Acura NSX, to bring us out to start qualifying. Someone can clarify. I should be checking now, but I believe it is. I believe it is a split quali, being such a short track, similar to the one that we did at Red Bull Ring. And it does seem to be split quali. Michael D granted that their next lap is valid, should be setting the pace for the AM field. I believe AMs are out first. AMs are out now. I don't think there are any pros that are out on track as of right now. Should just be AMs. But Michael D, the sole driver to be using the Acura/Honda NSX. Depending on what country you are in, you will see either Honda or NSX in your area. Or not Honda or NSX, Honda or Acura. Michael D now out and let off the leash. This is going to be the first flying lap of the session. The first flying lap for AM qualifying. We'll see what Michael D is able to do. Will be setting the benchmark for the AM field. Coming around the shell hairpin and into the Hislop chicane. Trying to negotiate the brakes, negotiate the steering, get that car slowed down as quickly as possible and as controlled as possible. Stability, very, very crucial through there. You do not want to get on the brakes too hard. A lot of trail braking through those chicanes will come in very handy. A couple corners left to see what the time to beat an AM will be. And that Lamborghini of, I believe that may have been FCP behind, did get dropped over this lap. Coming out of Lodge Corner and up into the kink of Deer Leap. What is it going to be? What is the time to beat? A 38.5 for Michael D is the time to beat, but immediately bested with a 36.5 from Nate in the McLaren 720S GT3. Currently the pole sitter in AM. Slinky goes 0.04 of a second slower. Manelli, also in the 720S GT3, does best that lap time of Nate by about 1/4 of a second. We've got 39 cars entered tonight. 39 cars awaiting to qualify. 20 amateur drivers here in qualifying right now, and then it will be 19 AMs coming next. Mataj with a 34.8, encroaching on those times that we saw some of those pro drivers running at the end of the free practice session. But Mataj, just like last week at Silverstone and at Monza, will likely be starting in the midst of many of the pros. And while they are going to be racing each other, you may want to take a little bit of caution, because Mataj has been the victim of some misguided, I would say, aggression, but just being caught in the midst of the battles in pro, mid-pack battles in pro, while he is running in the AM lead and has just caught the sour end of that deal. But Mataj looking to hold on to it here. Energy in the Ford Mustang less than 1/4 of a second behind. Still half of this AM session left to improve. Taj still on another lap. Not sure if this is going to be another attempt at a quali lap or just a lap around to get back and attempt another lap, or this could be another flying lap. Taj with a 34.8, around a second off of the times that we saw in pro, but should be able to put him well into the pro field. Is it an improvement? It is. 34.2 now, encroaching on half a second, or should be right at half a second behind those times that our pros were running earlier. 3/4 of a second to the P2M of Energy in that Ford Mustang, which we have seen Ormiston bring to a very quick time here, running that 33.7. Taj still with time to improve and a little bit of time left to do that in this qualifying session. But the majority of our AM drivers having set their times. Langley, Rogue, Fuzzy, and Wilson yet to set a valid lap time here in qualifying, as Wilson goes P8 and waiting for some more. We do have a little bit of shuffling. I think that may have been Dingham going up into P3, Nate into P4, and the McLarens seem to be a very heavy threat here in qualifying. It is 2/3 of the top 6 as Georgester knocks one of those McLarens down, or 2 of those McLarens down a peg. It was a McLaren siege at the front of the field, claiming the 2nd and 3rd row. Now they have been relegated to the 2nd and 4th rows, now the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th rows, as more times are put in. Langley with a time good enough for P3, but Mataj is hunting that 33-second lap time will have some traffic up ahead to maybe impede on that progress. Still not looking like Mataj is going to be touched in qualifying. Almost a second ahead of the rest of the AM field. And a force to be reckoned with in AM. But the battle in quali is between Energy and Langley right now, as they are both within 0.02 of a second on the dot. And not much that is needed to be improved upon for Langley to move up into P2. Energy does knock a 10th off of that time. Dingham up into P2 in that McLaren. And Mataj will get one more flying lap next time he comes across the line. And is close to having clean air. Does have the P4 BMW of Langley just ahead. And that BMW is about a second slower, at least on the posted lap times. But could be some time to be found for Langley. Is not an improvement on that lap, and it is not going to be an improvement for Mataj either. Have all of our AM set a flying lap. Rogue and Fuzzy yet to set a qualifying lap. Has 50 seconds left in AM quali. And do we have our pros queued up at the end of the pit lane? Stolowski in that Porsche 992 GT3R at the very end of the pit lane, ready to get started with his lap. Coming around the shell bend. Mataj well onto the rear of that BMW of Langley, but is that going to be offering a little bit of slipstream help down these short, quick straights? It depends where that BMW is and where that Porsche is when they come into the next chicane. That Porsche looking to buy a little bit more time to get some insurance. Dingham will get one more lap, just barely. And this is going to be it for Dingham. Stolowski will be rolling out of the pit lane. If I can find that Porsche. And the first Porsche out in Pro. Dingham not going to improve. Energy not going to improve. Manelli not going to improve. Mataj is looking to improve, looking to build more of a buffer between him and his AM compatriots. But it does seem to be Mataj is going to be untouchable for pole position in AM. Not going to improve, but that's only 0.3 behind the times that we saw in Pro. Stolowski, the front of the field in Pro, leading the charge for Pro in that almost Rothmans liveried Porsche. Does have quite the gang behind. I believe that is going to be the Audi of Ouroboros, a top contender in this series. Not too good of a run last week at Silverstone, looking to reclaim some of those points tonight here at Oulton Park. But these pros making their way around the track as they will get ready to start their qualifying session officially. As long as Stolowski brings his Porsche home safe, should be the benchmark for the Pro field. There is a little bit of argy-bargy back here between the McLaren of, I believe it may be Iceberg, as Ouroboros does open up a gap behind the 222 Porsche of Stolowski. And Stolowski will be the one to set the first time here in Pro Quali. Coming down into the kink of 2. And the Cascades left-hander of 3. Hammered down the straight before the island bend and the shell hairpin. Quite a lot of open track ahead of this Porsche of Stolowski. And Mataj has set a very respectable time to beat. All of the AM top 5 have, but Mataj only 0.3 behind the some of the top times that we saw in pro should be well into the pro field and should have quite the buffer between themselves and the rest of the field. Platypus actually setting the first time in pro, less than a tenth behind that time of Mataj, but currently leading in pro quali. Back on board with the Porsche of Stolowski. Should be the next across the line. Platypus currently on pole in pro. The Porsche of Stolowski now coming up the hill and across the line. What's it going to be? It is good enough for P2 in pro. Ouroboros to the top of the timing boards, the first to break the 33-second barrier. A 33.8 for Ouroboros, and the sister Audi of Prieto just barely a tenth behind. And I think that is going to be a 34.010 for Prieto. Brad now just a tenth behind that time of Ouroboros, just besting that Audi by 8 thousandths of a second. And now we have a fight. Aramich just 5 thousandths of a second behind the pole sitting lap time in pro of Ouroboros at 33.892. Aramich just 5 thousandths of a second behind. And the top 5 in pro separated by just 12 hundredths of a second. As we have more times coming across the line, is Platypus going to improve? It's good enough for P4, 6 hundredths of a second behind P1 of Ouroboros, and this is as tight of a field as you can ask for. Granted, we are just at the beginning of qualifying, as we will see the time start coming down the board. Giant into P3 with that Porsche, the top Porsche in pro, paying good respect to those Grillo Manti colors, is rocking those liveries. Means that you have some very big shoes to fill. Ouroboros now with the absolute flyer, the blistering lap, a 33.4, fastest lap that we have seen this evening, both between practice and quali. Prieto quick to follow behind with a 33.5, and Ormiston with a 33.6. It was quite the top field, but the big boys are out to play. Ouroboros still on pole. Ormiston with something to prove, as Aramich knocks Ormiston down a peg and into P4. Aramich onto the podium in quali here. But Ormiston with a name to reclaim, as has won every single round in this championship aside from the previous round at Silverstone. And is that a sign of things to come? Is it going to be a change of pace? Remember, that winner previously was Platypus in the Aston Martin. Has changed the livery a little bit, was running the Gulf livery, now we're running a silver and blue livery. Currently P5, did improve by a couple positions on that last lap. Ouroboros still the pole sitter. The 221 coming across the line of Giant, P6 currently. The 222 of Stolowski ahead of the Audi of Ouroboros, and that Audi seems to be very, very comfortable here around Oulton Park. Is it going to be an improvement for Stolowski? It is not. Not going to be an improvement for Ouroboros either. We'll return to the pit lane, get some fresh slicks on that Audi, get some fresh fuel in it, and get back out there and try to improve for the last bit of this quali session. Prieto now eclipsing the sister car with a 33.2. Now with a quarter-second lead ahead of the rest of the pro field. Who is going to be the first to answer, or does Prieto have pole locked in here? We do have about 3 laps left of quali here. 3 minutes left, depending on where you are on track. That gives you 2 or 3 more laps, if you are able to overlap those nicely. Ouroboros just coming out of the pit lane will likely get this lap and 1 more, maybe 2 more. That gives possibly only 1 more chance to get another flying lap to try to improve. Your mom of the McLaren now up into P3, pushing the Ferrari and Ford of Ormiston and Aramich down. Aramich looking for a good result here this round. Has not had the best luck this season, but is looking for a better result. Prieto still top of the timing boards with a 33.240. And it is an Audi lockout on the front row, but is anyone going to be able to upset that? As Prieto does build a little bit of a gap to the car ahead. The number 2 of Iceberg coming across the line to start the penultimate flying lap for Prieto. Is anyone going to be able to knock the Audis down a peg, or is it going to be a front row lockout? I don't think that's going to be for the first time this season. I want to say they had the front row lockout at Monza, but I am not 100% sure. If somebody would like to clarify for me. I want to say these Audis may have had a front row lockout at Barcelona as well, but I could be wrong. Does Ouroboros get it on this next lap? This is going to be the final lap for Ouroboros to try to improve. Needs to be everything that Audi has, but it's not going to happen then. Qualifying is over for Ouroboros, overcooking it into turn number 1. And does Ouroboros now fall down the order, as Ouroboros will not be able to defend P2 and may leave Prieto all alone on the front row. Those Audis have been very quick with early pace, but as the stint goes on, we do have one stop. At the later half of the race, they have not been able to hold on to the pace, and they have not really been able to fend off many cars. It's going to come down to pit strategy, but I'm not sure how much pit strategy will help here with such a short time gain or loss. Giant pushing Ouroboros off of the front row, and Giant putting that Grillo Porsche into P2, 4/10 of a second behind the Audi of Prieto. Does have another lap to try to improve. Prieto into the pit lane, will not be able to buy insurance, and that is as good as he will do. Giant has the opportunity, only needs 0.05 of a second to take that pole position away. Not too much time to find. That's a little bit earlier on the throttle out of any corner on the track. As we have a couple more laps to be completed. Professor Slap does not improve. P10 for Slap. The number 11 Mustang of Salinas looking to improve. Does improve. Only up one position. The number 1 of Aramich does not improve. Stays P6. The 420 of Psycaster does not improve. The 314 of Ormiston currently down to P7. Is it going to be enough to snatch the pole position away here at the very end of quali? It is not. Stays P7. Giant stays P2. Who is that next car across? That is Peach. Does not improve. The number 2 of Iceberg. Will Iceberg be able to improve? Not going to be a faster lap with that corner exit. Very, very squirrely, very loose. May be an improvement, is an improvement, but not as much as it could have been. The number 21 coming across the line. And Platypus, the previous race winner, only good enough for P10 here. Does Brad have enough left in this BMW to bring the upset at the very end? Up into P3, does go up a position, knocks that Audi of Ouroboros down a peg, but is not enough to steal pole position away. Well, how did they end up in Pro? Prieto P1 overall, Giant P2, Brad P3, Ouroboros P4, Your Mom P5, Aramich P6, Ormiston P7, Iceberg P8, Peach P9, Platypus P10, Slap P11, Brute P12, Mad Psycaster P13, Stolowski P14, Salinas P15, Pop P16, Ricky Bobby P17, Marvy P18, and Autry P19 in AM. Matage at the top of the timing boards, a 34-1. Will start P1 in AM. Dingham P2. Clint P3, Energy P4, Manelli P5, Langley P6, Wilson P7, Nate P8, Georgester P9, Nomad P10, Peachy P11, Cabe P12, Muddy Slinky P13, FCP P14, Michael D P15, Christian B P16, Sierra P17, Rowden P18, Fuzzy P19, and Rogue P20. Well, that brings an end to qualifying. Now the work is set. So I hope we did not lose anyone at the front. I don't think we did. Mataj with 2 pros between him and the McLaren of Dingham. Offset to the outside. That will give Mataj the benefit, at least in the AM battle. Prieto, an Audi back on top here in GT3, here in GoFAST Racing, the 3rd season of this series. This is the 5th round here at Oulton Park. It is going to be a 45-minute race, 1 stop. Prieto, with all of the work to do, does not have a teammate immediately beside or behind, is offset just like that AM battle for the lead. But Prieto in the Audi will be leading us off the line. And let's go on board as Prieto goes to fire up this Audi. Waiting till the very last moment to preserve all fuel possible. Don't know that it really helps that much, but if it is not broke, do not fix it. We'll start this car just when it comes time to do so. Now starting this Audi and rolling off the line. Get a quick little glimpse of the sister Audis side by side. Prieto and Giant. Giant, I believe this is his best qualifying so far this season. It may be the same for Brad as well. But some of our top contenders, Ouroboros, Your Mom, Aramich, Ormiston, Peach, Platypus, they are all further down the order. Prieto up at the front. Oh, sorry, let me fix that. Thank you for letting me know. Sometimes I forget to fix some things, but that is okay. Sorry, it has been a very busy week for me. We should be fixed now. There we go. Now we look professional. Prieto and Giant. Prieto has a lot of work to do to defend. Very easy to lose these positions as you have a quick right-hander and then a left-hander, and that will open the door for Giant to have that overtaking opportunity into what is technically turn 2, but turn 3 Cascades, as if Prieto is not able to close off that move very early on, it may be side by side and the Porsche with the advantage heading into turn number 3. Prieto will have the inside, should be able to lock that down, but the Porsche very, very good when it comes to acceleration, especially here at these rolling starts. So Prieto needs to have a perfect start if he wants to hold on to this lead. As they come 2 by 2, they get formed up properly on the grid, as we can see going all the way back, all of those multitudes of colors of GT cars. This Giant does have to catch up to Prieto in front. Prieto will be trying to position that Audi in the best position possible heading into turn number 1. Needs to get that move blocked off as we get ready to take the green flag. Green, green, green. We are racing. Ouroboros behind, very eagerly looking for the move, but that is not going to be the move that we wanted to see. Your mom and Giant immediately involved in that incident very early on in the race. Just a little bit too eager from the Audi of Ouroboros, I believe, but that does open the door completely for Prieto. Removes the variable, removes the challenge, but Prieto overdrives Island Bend and completely throws away the lead hard into the wall, and that is nearly going to be the race over. And the McLaren of Icebergs doing the same thing. Brad into the lead in an absolute, I mean, I don't know if you could have pulled a handle on a slot machine and come out with a better outcome than that for Brad. That was an absolute just random gamble, and Brad won there. The Mustangs battling. Peach is in front of Ormiston, but Prieto at the very back of the field, and we do have an incident involving some of our mid-pack Clint in the Mustang, and a few more of our cars up ahead. The number 4 of Langley off at the second chicane. Brad in the BMW up in the front as Mataj allows the McLaren of Pop to go through, just trying to avoid any drama. But Brad into P1 at the first lap here, did qualify P3, but both of the leaders taken out and taken themselves out as Aramich and Brad look to do battle here. Ouroboros in P3, but likely will be receiving a penalty from that contact with Giant, but now has all the work ahead to try and get as far ahead and come up with the best position possible. Brad and Aramich breaking away from the rest of the field. Mataj, with Dingham close behind, has allowed the majority of the pro cars around him to go by as to try and avoid any sort of miscalculations there, but overcooks the first chicane, and that is going to open the door for Ricky Bobby, as Mataj will just have to slide behind. But some early nerves, some early pressure for Mataj, it seems. Just needs to get those bearings set. But a lot of curb usage, a lot of tires in the dirt. Mataj just trying to hold on to that lead. Aramich trying to close up on the BMW of Brad. Brad did out-qualify Aramich, so we know this pace is similar to what it should be. The Mustangs behind, looking to do battle into turn 1. Ormiston does have some front end damage on that Mustang. Peach does not seem to have any. And now Mataj has dropped behind the McLaren of Dingham. I think just some early nerves from Mataj in that Porsche, but not outside of the opportunity to get this position back. Do have a little bit of a scrap between Slap and Stolowski, as Stolowski does seem to be opening up a gap between the front and mid pack. And it is a Ferrari and a Porsche sandwich as they come into the first chicane. Brad trying to pull away from that Ferrari of Aramich, but that BMW does not seem to be able to do so. The hay bales have been knocked into the track and get completely punted by the Aston Martin of Platypus. Started P10, but it has found some great position after that turn 1 chaos up into P4 and not outside of a shout of winning this race. Platypus did walk into the win last week at Silverstone, and we may see it happen again here tonight at Oulton Park. Dingham pulling away from Mataj slightly, That Porsche of Ricky Bobby making a couple mistakes coming into Lodge Corner. And is that going to choke this battle up? Maybe give Mataj the opportunity to get back into it. Manelli with a gap between themselves and the lead battle in AM. That battle is still within sight, and if that battle heats up, should bring Manelli back into it. Brad and Aramich. Brad now having to start thinking about going a little bit defensive as Aramich in that Ferrari is closing up quite a little bit deep into the bend from Brad, and I think a little bit of a bobble coming out too early on the throttle. But that Ferrari of Aramich is all over the rear of that BMW, trying to use and abuse those curbs as good as possible, or as well as possible, without upsetting the suspension on that BMW. Upset that suspension greatly reduces your power out of the corner, but Aramich in this Ferrari 296 all over the rear of this BMW of Brad. And this move is brewing as they come out of the second chicane, up the hill, then down the hill, the identical left-handers before we come into the right-hander of Druids. And this Ferrari definitely applying that pressure to that BMW up ahead, but the BMW does seem to get a good run out of Druids. That BMW does not have slipstream help like this Ferrari of Aramich does. Is it going to be a case of too close, or close but not close enough for the Ferrari? I think it's just going to have to be forcing the mistake from Brad to get this move for the lead done. Does not want to waste any time in doing so, but also does not want to battle too hard, as Ouroboros is right behind, and in that Audi does set the fastest lap. And we have some top contenders all the way back into the background. The previous race winner of Platypus, Peach, and Ormiston, as Aramich tries to take advantage of that little bit of an overshoot by Brad into the hairpin. And the BMW too late on the brakes as Brad forfeits the lead. Aramich now up in front with Ouroboros in tow, and Platypus looks to find themselves in P3 if they can find a way to get past the BMW of Brad. Brad still has pace, but now has a little bit of nerves and pressure to alleviate. Platypus in the Aston Martin, definitely not going to want to be held up by the BMW of Brad. And all over the rear bumper of that Beamer is that Aston Martin. Dingham still trying to find a way to get past the Porsche of Ricky Bobby, and that does bring Mataj right back into this battle. Does that allow Manelli to close up? Manelli has broken away from the rest of the AM field. A clean podium in AM, but Mataj and Dingham fighting for the lead here in AM. And Mataj may have a run into turn one, eyeing the inside of that McLaren, feints the move, but not quite close enough. Does have some slipstream to use from that McLaren, as Dingham is still trying to follow in the slipstream of that Porsche just ahead. Mataj now all over that McLaren, and may eye a move here into the hairpin if that McLaren overshoots. The opportunity does not open, but getting closer and closer together. This battle for the lead in AM being held up by the Porsche of Ricky Bobby, and that McLaren of Manelli closing in closer and closer behind. Platypus and Brad battling for the pro podium. Not going to say podium. Don't even know what that is. But maybe into Druids as Platypus sends it. They do make contact. It is door-to-door contact. Platypus does wait up, and I think we'll try to give that position back as well as possible. But Brad now dropping down quite a few positions, and Platypus, if Platypus does not give that position back, I think it is going to be a penalty applied, maybe a penalty applied. Regardless, we'd have to wait for race control after the race to confirm or deny that. Battle for the AM lead continuing on. another lap with this trio. The pro driver of Ricky Bobby P11 in pro, and seems to be holding up this battle for the AM lead. Does not have any obligation to get out of the way, but is in a position that is advantageous for the Porsche of Mataj behind. Did drop out from the lead, qualified in pole in AM, trying to fight this lead back, but that McLaren of Manelli closer and closer behind. Now the McLaren finding a little bit of a gap as they come into the hairpin. And still waiting for that mistake is Mataj in the Porsche behind. But the mistake that may never come. Mataj needs to find some pace in that Porsche before this McLaren finds a way past the Porsche of Ricky Bobby. Aramich now broken away from Ouroboros and outside of slipstream range. Over a second between the Ferrari and Audi, and then 3 seconds between the now P3 Mustang of Peach. Ormiston just catching the foul end of that battle, has dropped down into P5, but does hold the fastest lap. And within a few laps time, we will be approaching that pit window. Dingham still trying to find a way past the Porsche of Ricky Bobby, now getting a little bit impatient. Had to check up, get off the throttle, and does that open the door for Mataj into turn 1. Closer than he ever has been, but still just biding his time, staying behind. Mataj pushing, 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 and that McLaren of Manelli closer and closer and closer. Was 3.5 seconds the gap, now 2.1. Between now and a couple laps ago. But I want to see how close this Porsche of Mataj gets to the back of this McLaren. This is on board with the battle for the AM lead. The Porsche up ahead of Ricky Bobby, as Mataj is trying to find a way to get up onto the rear of this McLaren of Dingham. Dingham, I believe, trying to take his first race win in AM this season. Mataj does get a good run, good rotation out of the chicane, but not quite as good as the McLaren up ahead. And we do have a little bit of a slipstream train forming. Mataj just needing to play to the strengths of this Porsche. But Dingham seems to be playing to the strengths of that McLaren. A little bit of oversteer coming out of the chicane, though. And that does, I say it was going to close the gap between the Porsche and the McLaren, but it seems to have closed the gap in the other way up onto the Porsche up ahead. An evenly matched battle here in AM as the battle in Pro continues on. Ouroboros now within a second of the Ferrari ahead. Slap still trying to find a way to get past the Porsche of Stolowski, and may look for it. Feints the move, but does not find it. And this group is just all choked up together. Brad, the BMW that qualified P3, found themselves in the lead and threw that lead away. Now currently in P8, trying to defend against the Mustang of Salinas behind. Dingham into the pit lane, and this is going to be a strategy call. No damage on that McLaren, but a quick stop in and out, and no reactionary stop from Mataj, as I think Dingham is thinking that Mataj will be held up by that Porsche more than he was in that battle. See if Mataj is able to get past the Porsche of Ricky Bobby, defending this position very well, as they are still racing in overall. But neither Dingham nor Mataj were able to get past the Porsche of Ricky Bobby. And the McLaren of Dingham getting out of the way of this battle did open the door for Mataj to get a little bit of breathing room up ahead, and may just have comfortable pace to run. But Dingham, the first to come into the pit lane. I say the first to come in, but I think we may have had some out of line pit lane entries, but Wilson, Iceberg, Brute, Michael D, and Prieto. Prieto did come in after that damage, I do know that. Iceberg, I believe, did as well. Dingham, the first of the AMs to come in on a scheduled stop, I believe. Wilson may have also come in on a scheduled stop. I am not quite sure of their strategy. The battle for the lead in Pro heating up as Aramich and Ouroboros battling for the lead. Ouroboros now within slipstream range of that Ferrari as traffic is starting to become a topic in this battle. As they come out of Druids, there is the Lamborghini up ahead. The number 711 Lamborghini does bow out of the way. That was the Lamborghini of Rogue. And Aramich and Ouroboros coming across the line one after the other. Has Mataj found a way past the Porsche of Ricky Bobby? Has not. The gap has actually grown. Did Mataj make a mistake? Because any mistakes that Mataj makes, any slowing of pace is going to play directly into Dingham's hand with that early pit strategy. Traffic coming into the battle here in Pro. Coming into the old shell corner. Is Ouroboros going to be able to find a way past the Ferrari of Aramich, or is traffic going to play into this battle perfectly? Ouroboros does have a run on the Ferrari as they come into the second chicane. Will Ouroboros set up the move at the exit? I think so, forcing Aramich to go a little bit inside and allowing some breathing room to get more momentum out of the corner. Not quite going to be close enough this time. Still all over each other, this battle in Pro. Taj still chasing that Porsche of Ricky Bobby ahead. And Brad still defending against Selena's slap, still unable to get past the Porsche of Stolowski, now up into P6. Then Ormison, who comes into the pit lane. Aramich dives into the pit lane, and is this going to be the overcut for Aramich in the Ferrari? Leaves Ouroboros out to dry. And Ouroboros is no stranger of staying out very, very late. Sometimes it plays into his hands, sometimes it does not. But I believe Ouroboros, feeling that he has some sizable pace to the rest of the field. Aramich very early in, coming in before the majority of the field should be coming in. Fuzzy in the Lamborghini in. Your mom in the McLaren in. The number 427 of Nate diving into the pit lane. Aramich now rolling out of the pit lane will come into the midst of the mid-pro pack and the AM lead, I believe. It is the BMW of Langley just behind Aramich in the Ferrari. And when does Ouroboros come into the pit lane? I think Ouroboros will stay out for quite a while. Has been one to stay out. Platypus, granted, some of the leaders have pit, but finding himself in P3 and not outside of a shout of winning this race. Ormiston currently P4 with that fastest lap, but also does have some damage on the front of that Mustang. Platypus going past some traffic. I think that may be the BMW of Rowden that they are going by, and that it is. Ormiston dives into the pit lane early. Hopefully that is no penalty, as the Mustang of Energy coming out does not repair that damage though. Ormiston comes in, rolls, and it looks to be a good stop for Ormiston. Needs to be perfect to try and close up any gaps that need to be closed. Bataj staying out. Where is the presumed AM leader, at least on pit strategy, about half a lap behind? Has Mataj played the strategy right? Has Dingham made a blunder. I think it's a little bit too early to tell as we've got some more stops coming in. Brad in the BMW coming in. Marvy in the Aston Martin coming in. Langley in the BMW coming in. Ormiston rolling out. Is that going to be a repair of that damage on that Mustang? It is not affecting the pace hardly at all. And Ormiston with the fastest lap rolls out of the pit lane. Stop complete a little bit before the halfway point here at Oulton Park. Ouroboros still out. Peach still out. Platypus still out. In that Aston Martin. Stolowski now finding himself in P4. Opening up the gap to the Ferrari of Slap by a little bit. Salinas in P6. Mataj now once again closing up to the rear of that. Oh, that is not going to help Mataj's chances at winning this race. Just keep it straight, keep it straight, keep it straight, and it is not going to stay straight. Stopped on track, does keep the car running as Platypus dives into the pit lane, but that may have been the lead gone for Mataj. Likely going to immediately come into the pit lane now. Get this stop over with. But where is Dingham? Dingham coming into the second chicane now. Does Mataj come into the pit lane? Mataj is into the pit lane. Manelli into the pit lane. And Manelli has been scored ahead of Mataj. Has Manelli played this strategy perfectly? Platypus rolling out of the pit lane. Where is Dingham? Coming into Druids. Has Dingham lost any pace, or is Dingham going to come out in the lead here in AM? It is going to be up to when Manelli comes out of the pit lane. Watching on the map, the number 34 of Dingham. And Dingham comes across the start-finish line and I believe will take the AM lead while the rest of the field is in the pit lane. Manelli now finally rolling out. Mataj actually was ahead, but now behind that McLaren of Dingham, as Dingham needs the strategy and needs the traffic to cooperate as best as possible. Autry in that Ferrari 296 getting a 30-second stop-and-go penalty for speeding in pit lane. Ouroboros in the pit lane, leaders in the pit lane. Ouroboros, Peach, and Stolowski coming into the pit lane. Ricky Bobby diving into the pit lane now as we are officially halfway through this race, round 5 here at Oulton Park. Ouroboros looking to come off the jacks. Where is Aramich? It's going to be a race down to the wire, as Slap has actually scored the leader. Ouroboros off the jacks, but where is Aramich? Aramich rolling into turn 1. We see the Audi of Ouroboros just rolling out of the pit lane, and just barely Ouroboros will hold on to this lead. Aramich just behind, but Aramich does have those warmed up tires. Those tires will be older though. Stolowski in the Porsche, 30-second stop and go penalty for speeding in pit lane. Was a great race. Is going to be a little bit spoiled having to serve that 30-second stop and go. In AM, Cabe coming into the pit lane. Peachy currently scored the leader in AM, yet to pit Nomad. Currently P3 in AM, yet to pit Sierra, yet to pit Slinky coming into pit. But the leading AM is going to be the McLaren of Dingham. And I believe with a sizable margin to those cars behind. Does have one car as a buffer between himself and the Porsche of Mataj, but Dingham in a good position to take home the win here in AM. Ouroboros and Aramich the battle in the lead for Pro, as we do have someone in the grass behind. Peach, Ormiston, and Platypus, as it is still anyone's race. The battle for the podium definitely warming up behind between Peach, Ormiston, and Platypus. But Ouroboros, as the McLaren of Peachy dives into the pit lane. Slap still out, currently scored the leader in Pro, but still has to serve that pit stop. and does have quite a margin to these cars, but I don't think it is going to be enough for a full pit stop without losing a position. Ouroboros, then Aramich. Ouroboros will be on the fresher tires. Aramich is on the warmer tires. Aramich will have to use that slight tire advantage before it completely evaporates. Peaching into the pit lane, Nomad into the pit lane, Sierra into the pit lane. Battle for the lead in AM between Mataj and Dingham, but I think Dingham is dropping back from that fight. As Ouroboros and Aramich, the battle for the lead in Pro is well on here with 20 minutes left in this race. That is a long way to battle, but remember, the Audi of Ouroboros up ahead does have the tire advantage. Aramich has warmer tires, pitting a few laps before, but Ouroboros absolutely played that strategy perfectly. But does Aramich have the move into Druids, or into Lodge Creek, that is? Just forces Ouroboros to go slightly defensive. That does open the door a little bit for Aramich. Still trying to find a way past. Does not happen on that lap. Maybe will happen on this lap. There is some traffic ahead that may become a factor. Slap into the pit lane, now rolling out of the pit lane. But Aramich in that Ferrari 296, trying to find a way past the leader, feinting the move into Island Bend. I don't think that Ouroboros fell for it, but very easy to apply pressure into the old shell corner. And does that allow Aramich all over the rear of that Audi? Nowhere to go. May be able to set up the move as long as Aramich can get a better run out of this chicane, but too much of the curb, and that is going to grow that gap. Still within slipstream range, but that fight is not going to come to a climax here. Aramich will have to recoup and regain that track position onto the rear of that Audi. But watch just behind, we do have the Mustang of Slinky in between, but the battle for the Pro podium between Peach, Ormiston, and Platypus. These three have all been running in relatively close proximity. Dingham with Mataj behind. This is the battle for the AM lead, but I don't think it's going to be too much of a battle. Dingham played that pit strategy to a T and should be holding on to that lead in AM. Ouroboros and Aramich still fighting for the Pro lead. There is quite a long time left to go, but Ouroboros should ultimately have the advantage with those fresher tires on that Audi. But traffic up ahead is going to play a factor in this battle. We see the Pro podium of Peach, Ormiston, and Platypus coming behind, but a Mustang roadblock up ahead, and this is not what Ouroboros wanted to see. They both dive out. Actually, one of them making contact in the wall. That was the two Porsches of Clint, or two Mustangs of Clint, and it was not Energy, but I think it was Christian B, as they tried to absolutely dive out of the way of these leaders. But that does bring Aramich back into this fight as they come into the second chicane. Aramich just trying to follow the line perfectly, find that slight deviation, open up that gap, apply that pressure, and get that move done. But it is a lot easier said than done. As long as Aramich stays within slipstream range, and as long as Ouroboros has to deal with lap traffic, car number 343, Michael D, the NSX, with a little bit of trouble at the hairpin, does get that NSX back on track. Brad trying to find a way past Salinas in the Mustang. And Pop now battling against Ricky Bobby. Dingham with a large gap to the 969 Porsche of Mataj. Cannot afford a mistake though, as that Porsche is just one mistake away. Dingham in a good position to take home their first win in AM this season. Aramich a little bit high, diamonding the corner though. Going up high to try and get a better run out. It's a little bit of a oval track maneuver there. And Ouroboros held up at the chicane. That does allow Aramich to get alongside, does have a nose, but Ouroboros ultimately has the run. Aramich does force the move. They make a very slight contact, then a little bit more contact, and Aramich does ultimately find a way past Aramich up into the lead. A little bit of argy-bargy, but I think that is just some racing contact there, as Aramich in that Ferrari 296 is now the leader. But how will the tires play a role in this battle? Remember, that Audi of Ouroboros has fresher tires than the Ferrari of Aramich. And with a third of this race still yet to go, does that Ferrari have the pace to finish this race in this position? Should be an easy podium if those tires do fall off of that Ferrari. But this is not going to be an easily given up lead. Aramich is going to defend this lead to the very end. Battle just behind between the sister Mustangs of Ormiston and Peach. Peach is ahead of Ormiston. Ormiston currently the championship leader, having won the first 3 rounds of this season, but did not win the last round at Silverstone and is not in a podium position here at Oulton Park. These Mustangs have been top contenders, but they do not seem to be at the upper echelon of performance here at Oulton Park. Some cars just are suited to other tracks better, or some tracks better than others. Ouroboros in that Audi, you can tell, pushing, clattering over the curbs at the second chicane, but still within slipstream range of that Ferrari ahead, and Ouroboros is not going to allow Aramich to pull away. And there is a group of traffic up ahead. The Porsche of Georgester and the Ferrari of Cabe, then the McLaren of Peachy, and the number 34, actually not number 34, that's the number 334 of Peach and Ouroboros. Around a quarter of a second, the battle between the two leaders here in Pro, and the longer they battle, the closer and closer that group behind will get. And with this lot of traffic up ahead, it is going to make defending this lead very interesting, but it is also going to potentially bring those drivers behind the battle for the Pro podium into this fight. They do get a little bit of breathing room as the AM Lamborghini, I believe, of Rogue dove out of the way to allow the leaders to go past. Has Dingham made a mistake? Mataj within slipstream range of that McLaren. The battle for the AM lead is back on. Now we have 2 battles for the lead to pay attention to. Also, Georgester still trying to find a way past Cabe in AM. Ouroboros and Aramich Ouroboros trying to find a way past the Ferrari of Aramich. Mataj and Dingham. Mataj trying to find a way past Dingham. Dingham did play the pit strategy perfectly. Mataj made a mistake, but I think Dingham has now made a mistake and brought Mataj back into this fight. And as we get closer and closer to this group of traffic up ahead, Aramich able to use that traffic to put a buffer between themselves and the Audi of Ouroboros. Does that traffic get out of the way for Ouroboros? They are alongside, not really going to impede, not going to help Aramich all too much, but they are doing what they are supposed to do, allow the leaders to go through. Dingham and Mataj may be finding themselves in a similar position. Actually, I think they've got quite a large opening of open air, as the cars ahead are not lap cars, they are just next cars in terms of position. And Dingham, aiming for the hole, shoots the gap, keeps it out of the wall, absolutely threads the needle, and keeps that McLaren in one piece. Wow, somebody clip that. That is the absolute move of the night. Sliding, threads the needle between the holes in the wall, does not make any sort of contact with either wall or the outside wall, and holds on to P2, and is not quite outside of the realm of possibility to take this lead back. Does have quite a ways to go, but we have seen multiple mistakes happen there at Island Bend. We have seen multiple leads blown at Island Bend. I think it may be called the leaders bend, because it has been absolutely sucking the leaders off of the track and out of their winning positions. I think we have seen it at that one specific point 3 times so far tonight, but traffic playing directly into Aramich's hand, as Aramich is able to calm those tires down, just ride along behind this traffic, but also allow more time to be eaten up, more life to be eaten up from those tires of Ouroboros and the Audi behind. Mataj back into the lead in AM where they started, but still have to finish in the lead if you want to take home this win. Dingham in P2, Manelli quite a ways behind in P3. Should be a podium locked down for these drivers in AM. Ouroboros back within a second of the Ferrari of Aramich. Roles reversed here, but this battling traffic up ahead is definitely playing a pivotal role in this battle for the lead. Almost 3 wide, the cars up ahead, as Aramich will try to get past this traffic as best as possible. Diving down through 1, 2 to go, and Ouroboros does get impeded slightly. That is no fault of the car being lapped. It is just the way that Aramich set up the move. Aramich using these traffic cars. Funny enough, that is the number 24 of Brute. I believe did come home with a podium last week at Silverstone, just not having quite the night that he was looking for tonight. But Aramich playing these traffic cars like chess pieces, as Cabe and the Ferrari exit stage right, and Brute does allow the leader to go past. That is about as good as it could have gone for Aramich. Got that slipstream, was able to get past. Platypus currently P5. The battling Mustangs still battling, but Peach holding on to this podium, as Ormiston still within a second, still trying to get that position back, but just unable to do so. I think this may be as spread out as we have seen the field at any point of this season. We have cars on every square inch of track, cars entering and exiting every single corner, every single lap. And this traffic has made this battle for the lead interesting. Ouroboros still scored within a second, and I think still has a good chance of grabbing that slipstream of the Ferrari up ahead. Actually should well be within that slipstream range. And I think that tire life is starting to show on that Ferrari. Running a little bit wide at the exit of the chicane. 2 tires in the dirt did kick up that dust. And tire life going to become a very big part of this battle. Remember, Ouroboros has, I think, 3 or 4 laps fresher tires than Aramich in the Ferrari. But Aramich has a very narrow track to defend. Should be able to hold on to this lead for some time, as Ouroboros still pushing. You saw that little bit of oversteer at the exit of turn 1. And Ouroboros is finding or fishing for every bit of pace he can get of that Aston Martin. Ormiston still following behind the Mustang of Peach, but just unable to find a way past. Very narrow here, hard to overtake. Easy to get close, but hard to just get that move done. As they come into the first chicane, Aramich may be able to grab a little bit of slipstream of the NSX of Michael D up ahead, but still more traffic, cars to deal with, as it is getting closer and closer to the crucial point of this race. We are approaching that last lap, and Michael D goes around in front of the leader, and I think that may have been a lift from Aramich to not make contact. Does that give Ouroboros a better run into Druids? Ouroboros now going to be within slipstream range between Druids and Lodge as they run down the straight before the final corner. They do have a traffic Lamborghini of, I believe that is FCP in that cheddar cheese looking Lamborghini. Aramich in the Ferrari, hoping that that Lamborghini adheres to those blue flags and allows him past, as this lead battle is going to come down to the very end. Aramich, remember, does have older tires by a couple laps than the Audi. Both have been pushing, and they are getting closer and closer to being able to break free. They do get a little bit of a gap in lap traffic, slightly sliding up for Aramich. Does that open the door for Ouroboros? Closer and closer within that slipstream range as they come into the first chicane. Ouroboros in the Audi seems to get a very good run out. And is Ouroboros with a tire advantage here? Is that tire advantage being shown as they come into the second chicane, able to get very close to the rear of that Ferrari? And you can see a little bit of oversteer at the exit from the Ferrari. I believe that is those tires showing their age as they come into Druids. That Audi much closer than the previous lap. We get a little bit of flashing of the lights as we are going to have one more lap after this one. 2 to go. We cross the line, and unless something happens that takes 8 seconds off, Ormiston is going to have to defend another lap, but 2 to go. The battle for the pro lead is well on. Aramich does have traffic to make it past, but that traffic played in a perfect position that does force Ouroboros to go wide around the outside. Has that affected Aramich's line as well? I don't think so. Go back on board with Ouroboros to try and close up to the Ferrari of Aramich. Remember, this Audi does have fresher tires, but is it going to be fresh enough tires? Completely abusing the curves at the entry to that first chicane. It will have a little bit of slipstream help down the straight between the 2 chicanes to the next chicane. As they come through, is that Audi able to get closer? A little bit of a bobble from Ouroboros. And I think Ouroboros just pushing a little bit too hard. Aramich will have one more lap to defend. And not much traffic. I think it's clear track up ahead for Aramich. Dingham has closed up to the back of the Porsche, the leading Porsche of Mataj slightly, and it is just them between each other. But the final lap of the race has begun, and it is Aramich versus Ouroboros. And looking backwards, Ouroboros is within slipstream range, but if this move is going to come, it's going to come at the very end of this lap. And as they come into Island Bend, Leaders Bend, does Aramich lose the lead at Island Bend on the last lap? No, does not. Breaks the curse, but it is a little bit high onto the shell hairpin. Ouroboros is very close as they come into the first chicane. That Audi able to get a very good run in, and much closer than he was before this chicane as they come into the second chicane. Is it going to be a lunge from Ouroboros? It is not, but all over the rear of this Ferrari is that Audi of Ouroboros as they come out of that chicane. Ouroboros is close, very, very close as they come into Druids. Ouroboros in the Audi just able to close up a little bit more, but the Ferrari does seem to get the better run, and I don't think that Ouroboros is going to be able to take this one away. Aramich looks to take home his first win here in the GoFAST Racing Season 3. Aramich wins round 5 at Oulton Park. Ouroboros takes home P2. Peach takes home P3. Ormiston P4 with the fastest lap. Platypus P5. Slap looks to take home P6, but we've got a battle for position, it seems. Actually, it is not a battle for position. Brute with some damage on the front of that Porsche. Mataj and Dingham, this battle has come a lot closer than it was, and Mataj has made a mistake. Is that heavy, heavy damage on that Porsche? Is that lead compromised? Mataj, I think, trying to limp this car home. It does not seem to be driving very well. Going on board, does not want to go straight, it seems. But Mataj just has to hold on one more corner. Is Dingham going to be able to steal this one at the very end? I don't think so. Mataj just barely holds on, and Mataj takes the win in round 5 in AM. Dingham takes home P2. Manelli takes home P3 to complete the AM podium, but Mataj barely held on to the very end. That car did not look very good at the end of that race, and Iceberg will be the last across the line. How did they finish in AM? Mataj taking home the win. Dingham P2, Manelli P3, Nate P4, Langley P5, Nomad P6, Energy P7, Peachy P8, Sierra P9, Cade P10, Slinky P11, Clint P12, Rowden P13, Michael D P14, Fuzzy P15, Christian B P16. Aramich takes the win in Pro. Ouroboros P2. Oop, take me back. Peach P3, Ormiston P4, Platypus P5, Slap P6, Salinas P7, Brad P8, Ricky Bobby P9, Mad Psycaster P10, Stolowski P11, Pop P12, Iceberg P13, Marvy P14, Brute P15, Prieto P16, Autry P17, Giant P18, and Your Mom P19. Remember, these results are tentative and can be altered based on any penalties that may be applied by race control at the end. Thank you all for tuning in. If you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel, I would greatly appreciate it if you would throw a subscription over to the YouTube channel. And if you would like to support the stream, please consider subscribing. If you do have the Twitch Prime subscription, that is free if you would like to use that. And if you purchase any Thrustmaster gear from the Thrustmaster store, please make sure that you use code RETROVEX, as it will give me a little bit of a percentage back on that purchase that you make, and hopefully I can get some rewards for you guys later on. Stick around with me, please, as we are going to raid somebody. Share the love, as we are going to find somebody to go ahead and throw these viewers over to. I think we are going to go ahead and raid my buddy Winter, who is not online anymore. 1 second. Please stick around, everybody, as we will go ahead and raid somebody. But if you guys wouldn't mind sticking around, I just got to find somebody to raid. My laptop is very slow, sorry. Alright, let's go raid Fujian. Thank you all for tuning in. Throw Fuji the love as they are getting started with their racing. And have a good night, everybody.